I know that JVT is getting ready for Money Moves later on, 2 to 4 p.m. This afternoon and every afternoon here on the network with Stormy Bonatoni. But I'm sure he'd love to be a fly on the wall for this segment right here as we're talking about the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of Orange County, JVT's team. Jensen, what do you make of this team? Big trade in the offseason here. Not a good year last year, only 72 wins. And the projection this year is actually worse at 70.5.
You dead last year, as you mentioned, in the American League West, and a team that is still kind of searching for not only health, but also continuity throughout their pitching staff. So as I began kind of looking at them overall, some bright spots to kind of hitch your wagon to. One is their man in the leadoff spot in the middle of the diamond. That is none other than shortstop Zach Neto. Breakout campaign for him last year, far and away now, and this is crazy to say with Mike Trout still on the team, Zach Neto, their best position player and maybe their best overall player right now. So behind him in the lineup, Nolan Schanuel, first base. Mike Trout will probably do more of the DHing this year in between center field with Joe Adell out there, and then Jorge Soler in left. Josh Lowe coming over in a trade with the Tampa Bay Rays will now be the right fielder. Logan O'Hoppe, one of the young catchers that not only is great behind the dish, but has got some juice with the bat too. It'll be a lengthened lineup, but not in the sense that you're used to seeing with contending lineups. Yohan Moncada will be their third baseman. Christian Moore, young phenom, was out of the University of Tennessee just a couple of years ago. More than likely their opening day second baseman. So the lineup, I think, Dave, should be a little bit better. They were fine hitting homers last year. They were fourth. I don't think people realize the LA Angels were fourth in Big League Baseball hitting home runs last year. They were dead last in average. So, Dave, that tells you they're a 3 true outcome team here. All right? There's going to be a lot of swing and miss with this club, but when they connect, it's a lot of slug, and it goes usually over the fence. So we'll see how that all plays out this year. They're going to need to improve on being 25th in runs scored, and they may get a little bit of help here from a little bit more of a bolstered rotation. You talked about the big trade this offseason. Taylor Ward, their middle-of-the-order bat, now a member of the Baltimore Orioles. He was traded for Grayson Rodriguez, and Rodriguez, one of the top pitching prospects, not only for Baltimore a couple of years ago, but also in all of Major League Baseball. He has front of the rotation ability, but it has been an injury that was one of the talks of the offseason, Dave. The Angels rumored to not even look at physicals before consummating this trade, and I don't know how that happens when you have a young player who has been hurt and has spent significant time on the IL. However, if he's right, then he teams with Yusei, Kikuchi as the ace of the staff, and Jose Soriano, a power right-handed fastball pitcher. That's a big three you could actually kind of sink your teeth into, especially with what Kikuchi and Soriano did last year. It's the back end of the bullpen that gives me a little bit more of a bullish nature on their over for the win total, Dave. It's set at 70.5, and Perry Manassian, their general manager, did a great job of being able to reinforce with some quality veteran free agent signees. Drew Pomeranz, you remember him as a setup man for the Chicago Cubs this past year. Kirby Yates was in the Dodgers bullpen. Jordan Romano was closing for the Philadelphia Phillies early in the season last year. Those 3 big free agent signees to go along with Robert Stevenson, who is kind of the closer in-house at the moment. They're going to be able to shorten games a lot more this year, Dave, and I think that gives them a fighting chance to be able to get over their win total.
We both, and we'll get to the A's as we continue Daily Diamond. We're going to break down every single team in Major League Baseball as we go before we get to opening day. But if we do believe that the A's are going to be better this year as well, if you believe that the Angels win total potentially could be an overplay at 70.5, that's got to take some wins away from the perceived top of the division, which would be Seattle, Houston, and Texas in whatever order we believe those teams would be. Are the Angels good enough to, I don't want to say win 80 games. I think if you're looking at division, you got to be looking 85, right? As a median, just to even have a chance to win a division. I don't know if we have any visions of grandeur of a team like that. But when you look at it, Alek Manoah, and you look at a Reed Detmers there, if they are the back end of that starting rotation past that big 3, if we want to call them a big 3. But again, if Grayson Rodriguez is right, that's why you make the trade for Taylor Ward, why you make a move like that with such a prominent player like Ward can be. Is that good enough? Is that 4-5 good enough to get through the rotation on a weekly basis and give yourself a chance to win on those off days that the big three aren't pitching?
I think so, but we also have to temper that, knowing that you are in a division with the Seattle Mariners, who I think have every opportunity to not only get back to the ALCS, but potentially win it. Big reason why I picked them at 5-1 in our VSiN MLB Futures draft yesterday. I think Houston takes a step back. I think if you're looking for a big regressor in the American League West, it would be the Astros. So many question marks in their rotation, especially without Framber Valdez. Hunter Brown's going to be great. He's going to contend for the Cy Young in the American League, but so many injuries that are littered through that pitching staff and uncertainty as well. Here's what if I'm an Angels fan, I would very much think that because you have the experience you just added with those 3 bullpen arms, it allows you an opportunity to not overextend that rotation, Dave. You can be a bit more conservative if you're Kurt Suzuki, who was just hired this offseason. Odd deal, by the way, just a 1-year deal. Incredibly odd. That just does not happen. But you have a group that from a bullpen standpoint, it might be one of the better, I think, roster constructions that we've seen at least in the last half decade there in the City of Angels. So they'll have a much better chance to try and win series where you were so worried about leads. And regardless of how big the lead was late in games, they just didn't have guys that were reliable to shut the door, Dave. So I think that allows you, if you're a Kikuchi, just kind of pin your ears back. If it's 5 and dive, great. We got some guys that can bridge the gap to the end there. Here's my key. One of my bold takes is that Zach Neto becomes a top 10 shortstop in all of Major League Baseball this year. Everything is there for that kid to be able to take off. So if you're looking at potential player props, he might be a guy that could be 30-30, 30 more homers, 30 more stolen bases this year. I think that is a very viable thing and an achievement that he could get. Joe Adell, breakout last year with the power numbers. Looking at some of the projections, got him at least for 30 home runs this year. The average is not going to be anywhere near 250. So that's the key for me, is looking at where are you in the middle of this lineup. Jorge Soler, years past, was great. Can there be enough balls put in play? Bottom of that lineup needs to stay healthy. Can they turn it over? It's there as far as power. Can they improve on the OPS? If so, it's all of a sudden a little bit more positive outlook. Not saying they're going to contend for a playoff spot. It's a tough division to be in, but I think they should be markedly better than 72 and 90 and the basement of the West from just a season ago.
You mentioned the Chief, Kurt Suzuki, coming over, and he's a legend in Washington, D.C. for his days there, helping them win a World Series title. In that, knowing the position of catcher, and you mentioned the kind of 5 and dive here, what type of impact do you think Suzuki will have in the pitching staff? Because I always feel like when you're bringing in a catcher to be your skipper, it's more like I'm handling the pitching staff, but from the bench. You know what I mean? That's where I'm really controlling this team.
Also, a guy that is just freshly removed from the game, Dave, and we're seeing that trend a lot more. We saw it here in Cleveland with Stephen Vogt, just a handful of years removed from actually playing, and that, I think, is something to relate to young players. There is urgency because, as I said, very awkward. You usually see
1-year
newly
deal.
hired managers get at least a 3-4 year deal. I thought that, to me, was wow. I mean, that's tough. You're asking a lot of a guy who's never done the role and then is going to do it at the major league level. And oh, by the way, if you don't do well, you're out of a job potentially after just one season.
Seems very odd. 40-1 to win the West, so an extreme long shot there.